Hello, my name is June, and today I'm going to be doing a basic eye look and also talking about a topic that is pretty personal, I should say. It's something that is difficult for me in terms of I'm still processing it. I'm still going through the motions of trying to figure out and deal with some of the things I'm going to be talking about, and that is going to be the main struggles that I have dealt with in friendships that have ended. And it's a difficult topic because those friendships that have ended still affect me to some degree, because there's a common pattern and a common thread and theme within friendships that have ended for me. And today I'm going to be talking about those patterns and those themes and how I have coped with them up to this point. So if you're interested in listening to this, keep watching. Okay, today I'm going to be using this Tom Ford Rose Prisme palette. It is very old. Would not recommend it. You don't need this palette. You do not. I've had it for a while and I enjoy it. I really like the way that it looks on my eyes, and I'm going to be using this. I already added a little eyeliner to my eyes and curled my lashes, but I need to do this, and I'm just going to go in with my finger. But common themes in friendships that have ended. So ending friendships has generally been a struggle for me, even when it's probably better if those friendships ended. It is challenging to end friendships, especially friendships where you still care about somebody. That's the thing, is sometimes not every relationship ends because you stop caring about someone or because someone became a bad guy, whether that's you or them. Sometimes friendships end because you realize that you're going down different paths, or you have different values, or core values or core morals of somebody don't align with you and the way that you want to live your life. And not that you can't be friendly, but sometimes you or the other person want more out of the relationship than those things that are misaligned allow for healthy relationships, at least. And I hope I'm making sense when I say all this. I am not a psychologist or anything. This is all just going to be personal experience that I'm talking about, and literally I am still trying to process some of these friendships that have ended, because it is challenging for me to not feel guilty. I do feel guilt and shame when it comes to friendships that have ended, because generally I'm the one that ends them. So 3 main issues that I have run into very commonly when it comes to friendships that have ended. And when I say a lot of friendships have ended, I don't mean so many. Just in the friendships that have ended, this is the 3 common issues for why I ended it. And the first one is lack of self-awareness / projection. The second one is distortion of reality or the narrative. It could be seen as miscommunication or gaslighting, but I don't want to go so far as to say gaslighting. I'm just going to say miscommunication and distortion of the narrative. And then the third one is hypercriticism in conjunction with a little bit of elitism. Sometimes elitism, sometimes not, but elitism is something that I have run into a lot when it comes to things that really bother me. A big part of why I end friendships is the elitism, and then when you have elitism, you generally have hypercriticism. And it's difficult dealing with hypercriticism and elitism, because that generally fosters this sense of psychological unsafety. You feel psychologically unsafe. You could say that with all 3 of those things, technically, but yeah, it it can mess with your head when you're surrounded by it enough. And when I say all these things, I'm not saying that I'm the perfect friend either, because there's a lot of aspects of my personality. There's a gnat. Of my personality that would drive most people insane. I do not respond to text. I am someone who leaves people on read. I am that person. I will answer pretty much 100% of the time if somebody calls me. Pretty much. But, and when I say that, very rarely do I not pick up when somebody calls me. But I don't respond to texts. I hate responding to texts. And most of the time, that is a huge red flag or deal breaker for most people. And I get that, because it's a communication aspect of friendships. And for me, I don't really care if people leave me on read and that sort of thing. It doesn't bother me. My siblings do that all the time to me as well, and it doesn't bother me personally, because most things aren't an emergency, and then if they are an emergency, I will call somebody. But yeah, so like that's an example of me being a bad communicator. Like when I'm saying all this and I'm talking about the reasons why I've ended friendships and why I still feel guilty sometimes about ending friendships and a lot of shame for ending friendships in the way that I did, I'm also not perfect. And I'm sure there's going to be some people who listen to this, and if people listen to this and hear that I leave people on read and think I'm the worst human being ever, and that's okay. Not everyone's going to like you. But when it comes to friendships, you should align yourself with people that have similar values and similar ways of how do you express loyalty, how do you express your communication and psychological safety and that sort of thing. You want those kinds of things to be aligned in your friendships. So when it's come to reality distortion or narrative distortion, this is something, so generally having one of these things generally doesn't end a friendship for me. It's generally if there's two of these at least, and then if it's three, wow, you've hit the jackpot. Okay. But when it comes to reality distortion, there has been times where I will tell people really emotional things, or we're having a heart-to-heart type of thing, and it's miscommunicated, and maybe I'm miscommunicating it, but when it comes to invalidation, or I guess reality distortion or narrative distortion, this is a big one. And we all interpret things through our own lens. We interpret reality through our own lens. We interpret communication through our own lens. But there is a difference between there are different degrees of how different something is remembered versus communicated. And we're all guilty of this because we don't have perfect minds. We don't have perfect memory. We don't have perfect communication. But if it's something where this happens all the time and it feels like you have to constantly revalidate your own experience, that can be really exhausting. That can be really, really exhausting. And it's something that I've struggled with personally, is accepting having to do this with friendships and relationships and all of that. It's a struggle. It's a struggle when you constantly feel like you have to revalidate your experience that you thought was closed, I suppose, or something that you've already talked about or dealt with somebody. That can be challenging, and it can be exhausting. It can be very, very exhausting. The other aspect, the lack of self-awareness and the projection, that can also be very exhausting when, everyone needs a reality check. Sometimes everyone needs a reality check, but sometimes it's easier to see things from an outside perspective. And, you know, I have had friends that have had to reality check me so hard. My partner reality checks me so hard all of the time, like very often, and not in a bad way. Like, it's very helpful. It can be very, very helpful. But there are people who don't want to reality check, who want to talk about how they struggle financially when they make $200,000 a year, you know, that kind of thing. And that's a very specific example, but giving an example. And it's difficult. And, you know, maybe the narrative distortion that I was talking about previously, maybe that was also them trying to give me a reality check too, and they just didn't. Okay, well, to be fair, the things that they were narratively distorting were things where I was like, you weren't there. You're saying that this happened. You weren't there. How can you say that it's not as bad as you? Like, it was just different. It was a different thing. I'm not going to get into it, but it was very traumatic incidences that had happened to me that I would like share with these people that I thought I was very close to, and then it would just be like, yeah, but it wasn't that bad. How would you know? You weren't there. Just because I seem happy doesn't mean that everything in my life has been happy. What are you talking about? But I think for a lot of people, it's difficult to not have the worst life that they've ever heard, which is fine. But when you tell somebody, it doesn't matter. I'm not gonna go into it that much. This is just an overview of why I have ended certain friendships, and that's a big one. The narrative distortion, and then the lack of self-awareness, you know. And I think there's a certain amount of all of this that we're willing to put up with as people in relationships, and that's fine, because it's not everyone is perfect, and I definitely believe in giving people grace and that sort of thing. I think I'm going to be done with this. I'm going to curl my eyelashes, do my mascara, but I have been talking for too long and I haven't done anything. But oh yeah, and I also got this new eyelash curler. The eyelash curler I had before was literally 10 years old and disgusting, and I cleaned it very constantly, but it was so done. And this fits my eyelashes a lot better. This is the Tweezerman 60 degree curl. It's the one meant for round eyes, and it's interesting. I wouldn't consider myself to have round eyes, but the top shape is like a round eye shape. Like, this gets all of my eyelashes for once, and I'm very happy with it. So I really like it so far. Okay, so I've talked about the first two, and then the third is the hypercriticism and deletism. And this is probably the one that's most common and the one that I put up with the most, and most people put up with the most, because it generally isn't a constant barrage of criticism and elitism, if that's what it's turning into. I think you can have hypercriticism without being an elitist, but I don't think you can be an elitist without having hypercriticism to some degree. Maybe I'm wrong, but this one is the one that I put up with the most, and generally the thing that makes me, it's usually also the thing where I put my foot down and I'm like, okay, I've had enough of this. And with this, the hypercriticism, that can be in a lot of different aspects of life, and it is difficult because sometimes people are just trying to be helpful and they don't view it as criticism. And so there is a balance, and it's difficult to find that balance. When I talk about friendships that I have ended, generally there are friendships that have lasted years. And friendships that I have tried to work out and get through and communicate with. And really, I have really worked to solve the issues in my friendships that are long-term and deep friendships. And sometimes it just doesn't, sometimes people don't want to change. Sometimes it's very, very difficult for people to change when they lack self-awareness, or when they are so hypercritical that it's becoming elitism and distortion of the narrative. Like, sometimes it's difficult, especially when you have someone who all three of those are happening. Not all the time, but sometimes people just can spiral. They can just spiral, and we're all prone to it. All of us have the capability of distorting the narrative, distorting how we view ourselves, where we lack self-awareness, and then becoming so hypercritical that we're elitist. All of us have the ability to do that. So it's difficult, and I could try to stay with those friends, but I had been trying to stay in those friendships for years, and it wasn't working out for me. I think it was working out for them in those aspects. And I do feel still currently so much shame and so much guilt about ending friendships that are like that, because since we all have the ability to become those things, including myself, I could definitely go down that road. We need to show people grace and forgiveness and that sort of thing. And it's not like I didn't confront those people about those things, but there's a part of me, the part of me that feels guilty, the part of me that feels shame, is the part of me where things didn't turn out perfectly. There wasn't closure in the way that I fantasize about, where everything works out perfectly. It didn't go like that. And that is probably the thing that I feel guilty about, is leaving people or ending friendships with people who they didn't intend to be the kind of person that I saw, I suppose, or that they were becoming necessarily. Like, they could have, but a lot of this stuff is very subconscious, and it's difficult because we can all become it. And some people are okay facing this, and if somebody says, you're becoming someone who's difficult to be around and is representing these characteristics, or having these characteristics that I don't enjoy and that I don't find healthy and that I don't want to surround myself with, like, most of the time people aren't going to respond well to that. Let's be real. Most of the time, even if you communicate it in a way that's gentle and positive and encouraging, it's difficult for people. It's difficult for any of us to be told that sort of thing. It's difficult. And some people take that criticism. I'm the kind of person where it is difficult for me to take criticism like that. And so I will leave, leave the conversation, think about it for a week, and come back and be like, yeah, I'm sorry. I am a shit person. I didn't realize. I really appreciate you for saying that. And ooh, the sun is coming out. For saying that and pointing that out to me. And it's not an easy thing for me to admit. And even if I sound annoyed, I'm more annoyed at myself. Like, that is how I deal with when I'm the problem, or people confront me about being the problem. And sometimes people will tell me something that's easy for me to digest. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I didn't realize that I was doing that, or saying it like that, or having that effect. And I appreciate you telling me that. I have 3 sisters, okay? And all of us are pretty sensitive, and all of us have different communication styles. So there have been times, there's times all of the time where we are communicating and then somebody gets upset, and then we have to come back and be like, okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it to come off like that. I'm a very blunt person, and so that's generally the issue when it comes to me communicating, is that I just sound like an asshole because I'm so blunt, and then I will have to come back and be like, I'm very sorry. I did not, like, I understand how that sounded now, and that wasn't my intention. But I'm very used to it. That is something that is very, very common. I have a lot of practice with that because I have so many sensitive people in my life, and I'm one of those people. But not everyone realizes necessarily that they're so sensitive. I try to communicate as best as I can and continue learning and continue growing. And I think most people, for the most part, are. But some people do live in a defensive mindset. And most of my struggles for feeling guilty when it comes to ending friendships are the fact that I feel like I could have communicated in a way where all of my fantasy of how this relationship could have gone about is plays out. Like I could be 100% perfect communicator. That's where my guilt comes from mostly, and the shame, I suppose, is like I wasn't able to solve this issue, and I wasn't able to figure this out, and I wasn't able to not even be a perfect person, just have things end in a way where everyone is happy. And that is a very normal feeling. It's a very, very normal thing that I'm talking about, a very normal occurrence. Like, that is so common. And, that's something I'm dealing with and struggling with right now as I'm talking. So those are the main common themes of why I have ended friendships in the past. And it's all at different intensities, different stages of life as well. Like, I was willing to put up with hypercriticism and elitism for a really long time in most of my friendships. Like, I'm 27, probably like till the age of around 26, I was so complacent to this type of behavior because I was raised around that. And so it was so normal for me to just make friends with people that were so hypercritical of me and my choices, and just, I just, looking back, I'm like, wow, like it's so, I think it's a combination of when it's combined with that plus gossiping, because I really dislike people gossiping and not actually trying to solve any of their problems or the things that they're saying are problems. I think it's like having a combination of the gossiping plus the hypercriticism. To me, it just doesn't make sense. And I put up with that for so long when it came to my friendships. And I am guilty of making friends with people like this. Like, I am the problem in this regard. Like, I maintain my friendships with people that do that, or I did at least. When it's come to other aspects, the other two aspects, for the narrative distortion, I put up with that way less than the other two. And I think the first time I ended a friendship with somebody where I realized that they were doing this pretty serious topics, I ended it immediately. And I think the first friendship I ended, I was like 15, 16, where that was happening, and I realized that was happening. And I did not put up with that. I ended things very soon after I realized that they were doing. Like pretty much when they were talking, I ended the friendship when they were like saying things that were just very out of line. And then when it comes to lack of self-awareness, generally, I mean, self-awareness can precede any of those things that I just talked about. A lot of these things are so intertwined with each other, you know. It's just, and most people lack self-awareness, but with different things, like, and that's not necessarily a bad thing all of the time. For example, maybe I suck at makeup. Maybe I lack self-awareness of my own face and makeup rules and that sort of thing, and maybe I lack awareness, and maybe I'm really, really bad socially at makeup. And I lack that awareness. Does it really matter if I'm having fun? Is it really so offensive? You know, that kind of thing. Sometimes lack of self-awareness is fine. And that's just like one example. But sometimes when it's combined with those other things that I was talking about, with the hypercriticism and elitism and the narrative distortion, if you also combine that with the lack of self-awareness, it can be a struggle. It can be a struggle for sure. I think I put on too much blush, but I need to contour my forehead for sure. It was looking a little big there for a couple of videos. Okay, good. I like this. I'm going to powder my face and highlighter and all of that, and then do my eyebrows. So ultimately, none of these people that I'm not friends with anymore are bad people in general. Like, saying that they're bad people is so subjective, and I'm not going to say that any of them are bad people. And the examples that I was giving and the three main reasons of why I've ended friendships, whether they're just a combination of two or all three of them together, doesn't mean that those people are even unhappy with their lives, okay? Or that they should be, because I'm not God. I don't know. I just know that those things were things that made me end the friendships. They were things that were something that I wasn't able to deal with in a way that was effective and conducive and changed anything for me to be happy in the relationships. And that can be a real difficult pill to swallow if you are like me and you are a fixer. I am definitely a fixer in relationships. I don't necessarily like to find problems. I'm not constantly trying to fix things. But when there are problems, I am someone who confronts things pretty much immediately and pretty much just as they are. And I try to make it to where both people can be happy in the relationship. And there are times when I'm the one that needs to change. For sure. There are definitely times where I'm the one that needs to change in a relationship. I either need to change my attitude or the way that I'm communicating or that sort of thing. And that's just part of relationships. It's just part of life. It's an issue when you're the only one doing it, when you're the only one who feels or is actively changing or trying to be accommodating. You know, that's a big issue. These are things that I have really struggled with, and that I continue to try to not beat myself up for and not feel so much guilt and so much shame when it comes to relationships that have ended. I don't really generally feel guilt about romantic relationships that have ended, just because to me that's more like, I haven't had so many serious relationships, I'm not gonna lie. So it's a little, most of my friendships have been more serious and more long lasting. Like, I've had friendships as long as most people's marriages. Okay, So, and then when things don't work out and you basically metaphorically have to get a divorce from them, it feels like the same, like, oh wow, I can't make a line today. Wow. Dealing with it in the same or similar way of ending like a decade-long marriage, you know, where it's not easy, and it's not necessarily something where you're just like, oh, bad guy, good guy, you know. I am not invaluable, okay? I'm not invaluable. So I'm going to, do I want to, you know what, I was gonna use this lip tint, and I love this lip tint. I think I'm going to use my favorite, I think I'm going to use one of my favorite lipsticks. I love this lipstick. This is First Dance in First Dance Charlotte Tilbury. I don't know. Ugh, so beautiful. So yeah, this isn't a video of I've solved every issue in my entire life. This is just a video of these are the things that I've been struggling with, or I have struggled with, and here is how I'm dealing with it. So, you know, honestly, it is still just processing. Just, I do need time still, and I am still processing all of these things and all of this reality, you know, and just the fact that I did have to end friendships, or I didn't have to, but I chose to end friendships. And oopsie, whoops, that was supposed to be cute. Whoopsie, that's not. Okay, that's better. So yeah, it's a very normal, common occurrence that I'm talking about, and sometimes it is just time. Sometimes it just needs some time to deal with these things and process it, but this is me processing, or part of it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and we're all just trying our best. We're all doing our best, and you're not a bad guy. You've got this. I'm trying to get this. We're gonna make it through. We're gonna make it through.